The Supreme Court has delivered the Supreme Judgment on the Supreme Law. As expected, immediately after the judgment, there were people who are going to celebrate. But this time round, both sides are up celebrating. We'll look at that and a lot more. We'll look at the big lies about the judgment. But more importantly, I want us to look at the big secrets. Let's begin with the celebrations. Immediately after the judgment, media was presenting the judgment as a big victory to the anti-BBI people. Meaning, therefore, the proponents who are the appellants in the Supreme Court, Raila Odinga, Uhuru Kenyatta, BBI Secretariat, were big losers. Indeed, this seems to be the thing if you looked at what was going on. William Ruto was celebrating. Weta the Fifth was celebrating. Musalia Mudavadi Madividi was celebrating, to firmly conclude that those who are against the BBI think they have scored big. Have they? On the other hand, Raila Odinga is quoted as saying he was okay with it. Lawyer Paul Mwangi, closely associated with Raila Odinga and a big member of the legal team for the BBI side, was again saying it was a good win for them. That is not surprising. I think if I was looking for the winners, I would first look at Wanjiku and say Wanjiku was a big winner. And I will explain why in a moment. But let's engage on whether or not the Ruto side has won. And this is where you find the big lies. I am not personally surprised that William Ruto and his team will jump up and celebrate and talk bad about BBI and challenge Uhuru Kenyatta and his team, not only to accept that BBI had come to an end, that reggae had been stopped, but they should go further and tell the country how much they spent, apologize to the country, and even pay back the money spent. That wouldn't be surprising to anybody. That is politics. What surprised me, however, are intelligent men and women in media going on screen and telling us BBI is dead. I tried on 2 TV shows, I gave up. I was even surprised more, almost horrified, that the media, looking at the headline, final nail in BBI coffin, BBI is dead, reggae has come to a complete stop. And I say, look, I can understand when politicians have lost, but they want to convince their followers it is them who has won. What I find difficult to believe is intelligent people, and especially media. So what do I mean by saying that there's no way one could convince anybody with a brain that BBI is dead? The case brought before the High Court by Kenyans who are entitled to that was that a group of Kenyans, perhaps led by Uhuru Kenyatta and Raila Odinga, through the BBI, were attempting to change the Kenyan constitution, and that they ought to be stopped from doing that. And they gave all manner of reasons. The High Court listened to them and agreed with them that you could not change the Kenyan constitution in the way you wanted. So they came up with this idea of basic structure, meaning there are sections of the constitution you could never at all change. They also came up with another idea, that if you wanted to change the constitution of the Republic of Kenya, you had to do it in the manner we did when we came up with the 2010 constitution. Okay? Civic education, public participation, constituent assemblies, then parliament and a referendum. That is the route you had to take. It was almost impossible. Again, they said, when you had done all that, somebody from somewhere, and that is from the courts, had to look at the law you are changing, the particular article, and they'll say, even after you have done that, painstakingly so, you are not going to be allowed to change that particular article. Look, in a sense, they were saying that you could not change the Kenyan constitution. You could not amend it. It was almost impossible. The people of BBI moved to the appeal court. The appeal court agreed with the litigant. They agreed with the high court that indeed you could not be allowed to dismember, to mutilate the Kenyan constitution. This is a supreme law celebrated by the people of Kenya. Nobody could be allowed to play with it. So they agreed with the high court. The BBI people moved to the Supreme Court. Now, let's stay with the Supreme Court. What did the Supreme Court say? The Supreme Court looked at all the issues raised, and they reduced them to 7. And they pronounced themselves on each of the 7. And on one of them, they were unanimous. That you cannot deny the people of Kenya the right to amend their constitution, so long as they do it in the manner not suggested by the High Court, not in the manner suggested by the Appeal Court, but in the manner clearly spelled out in the Kenyan Constitution. But however, there are 2 things they raised. That one, Uhuru Kenyatta was associated with this initiative. And as president, he was not supposed to be associated. To that extent, the entire process, the entire bill was then unconstitutional. To the extent that it was initiated by Uhuru Kenyatta, who as president was taking an opportunity offered to Wanjiko, and he is not Wanjiko. Very clear. Now, you must interrogate that. So there are 2 clear things here. One, that the Supreme Court is saying the people of Kenya can go ahead and amend their constitution tomorrow if they want. BBI can be taken to the referendum. Indeed, Uhuru Kenyatta, Raila Odinga, Junet Mohammed, Waweru, anybody else, take your BBI to the people to amend the Kenyan constitution. We allow you, and we are the final court. But they also said, we have disallowed the current bill because it was pushed by Kenyatta, the president. So what does that mean? It means 2 things. One, if that BBI bill is taken and given to Manyora, or somebody else who is not president, or a state officer, in fact, it shouldn't be Junet Mohammed, by the way. Then it's Waweru and somebody else, and not Junet Mohammed. Because these guys rarely think. Because the next argument will be Junet Mohammed is a state officer, he's a member of parliament also. And therefore, it should not be anywhere near that. It should be Dennis Waweru and Manyora, or somebody else. Kiplagat, I think, or Bilal here, my young man here. So that's what they are saying. The second thing they are saying is, you can now amend that constitution, of course, minding that we will not allow you to include the 70 new constituencies if you bring them in the manner it appears in the second schedule attached to that bill. It's just as simple as that. So now, looking at it that way, how can somebody ever say BBI is dead? When the court has said, go ahead and amend the constitution, who should be celebrating? It's very so I can understand when people are playing politics. What I can't understand is about the media. It's about intelligent men and women. Go ahead, Uhuru Kenyatta and Raila, amend the constitution. So long as it is not brought by the president or a state officer. Now, you must ask yourself a very big question. Supposing the Supreme Court had done what some lawyers, and they were flagged out. Some lawyers were saying the Supreme Court is the weakest link. They were threatening and blackmailing the Supreme Court. I'm happy the way Smoking Wanjala and Mother Kome came out and to tell them off. Supposing the Supreme Court had done what some of these people are saying, number one, it would have meant that they grant all the 7 issues isolated to Raila and Uhuru. In other words, reggae is back in the manner in which people are saying. You must ask yourself, was it going to be possible for the referendum to be held now, before the election? The answer is certainly no. Even the timelines will be very difficult. And even if they held, things like the BBI, the 70 constituencies, even within the bill, the current constitution, 1 year before the election, you can't change constituencies. In the bill, 6 months. We only have 4 months. So even if you could stretch your imagination, there is absolutely no way this referendum was going to be held between now and the next election. Secondly, an attempt to hold that referendum will cause chaos. It will be worse than rigging an election. It will cause chaos. And that's why I'm coming back to Wanjiko. If Raila and Uhuru had been granted everything, including the 2 prayers that were denied, you can imagine the pollution in the airspace in this country. This thing was going to throw confusion into the election. It was going to mess the election big. It is going to be so disruptive. People could not fairly talk of an election in the year 2022. That's just how bad it is. And therefore, if you look at it deeply, it is the same thing they have been given. Whether they had been allowed today to hold the election or not, they will still would want to hold that election, that referendum, after the election. So, if they had been granted everything, they were not going to hold that referendum before the election. They were going to hold the referendum after the election. What they have been given today also means, if they so desire, if they so wish, they will still hold the referendum next after election. Most likely early next year. Either way. So now ask yourself, who is the winner? Did the Supreme Court stop BBI? The answer is no. In fact, the BBI looked at the Supreme Court looked at the BBI vehicle. It said this vehicle has been parking for a year or so. We can't trust the tires. They could burst and kill human beings there. The Supreme Court has ordered the registrar of the Supreme Court to buy new tires and put it on the BBI vehicle which is parked at the Supreme Court yard. So who should celebrate therefore? The answer is simple to see. From a political point of view, anybody can celebrate. And indeed they are entitled to. But from a serious point of view, if you scratch beyond the surface, you can see the Supreme Court has given BBI not just a new lease of life. It has emboldened them. It has made things so clear. It will be impossible for a human being. I know there are many busybodies, especially from the NGO and civil society world. But it will be actually foolish after the Supreme Court has pronounced itself so clearly on this matter. It will be foolhardy for anybody to move to the High Court to challenge this. And that must be seen as a victory for the BBI people. The only thing the Supreme Court didn't pronounce itself on was in the issue of the question. They were saying it will be preemptive. It was premature. I doubt that's the way they should have gone. Because somebody will go to court about the same thing. The Supreme Court should have saved our time, future time. They should have given their opinion on that, so that even as the BBI handles, as the IEBC handles the referendum or any other referendum bill, they should know issues of whether you need one question, many, or otherwise. But if you look at it generally, from my own observation, the big lie is that BBI is dead. The big truth is that BBI has been given a serious new lease of life. This new lease of life will be seized by the proponents, because if the BBI referendum is about the handshake, it is about this country, and is something every Kenyan should embrace, not so much from the narrow points of leadership or positions, but in terms of addressing the ills, some of the challenges that have kept this country behind, some of the political questions which, if not resolved, no meaningful development can take place in this country. And we can therefore see the lies are clear, the truth is open, and let's live with the truth.